Hello, good morning everyone. This is Dr. Amrit from the Department of Pathology. I'm a professor here. So as usual, I feel like I'm a radio jockey for all of you, not able to interact with you, not able to take your questions, but I'll try my best that I can explain you this mechanism of hemoglobin electrophoresis as much in detail and as much in a simplified way as much possible. So let's see, what is hemoglobin electrophoresis? This is basically used to screen and identify variant and abnormal hemoglobins. So, and also help in the diagnosis of the diseases in which abnormal hemoglobin production is there. Okay, so what are the different types of the diseases which produces the abnormal hemoglobin? We will be talking a little bit in the third or the fourth slide. And what happens, what is the mechanism, that also we will be talking about it. Okay, so what is the purpose is it is used for a routine checkup. It is used to diagnose blood disorders, as I've discussed, to screen the genetic conditions, and very importantly help couples to find out how likely they will have a child with a particular disease, which is very, very important. And also, if the patient is instantly found to have a positive hemoglobin solubility test, so whether we need to find out whether the patient is positive for sickle cell or thalassemias. So how does the electrophoresis act? It uses an electric current. All right, it uses an electric current to separate normal and abnormal hemoglobins in the blood hemoglobin types. Okay, so it is basically a blood test that can detect various types of hemoglobins. So it is based on the principle of cellulose acetate and gel electrophoresis. Now this electrophoresis process takes the advantage that the hemoglobin types have different electrical charges. So during electrophoresis, the electric current is passed through a sample and the hemoglobin types are separated and they form different bands. So by comparing the pattern, you can see the types and the quantities of hemoglobin present in the blood sample. So hemoglobin basically is a oxygen carrying protein inside the RBCs. So it carries the oxygen from the lungs to the different parts of the body, so which helps in oxygenation and following this metabolism. Now there are hemoglobins are of different types. We will talk about it. Hemoglobin A, which is the most common hemoglobin which is seen in humans. It is hemoglobin A, which is majority, about more than 95%. And then also we carry hemoglobin A2 and hemoglobin F in a very, very minute quantities. So this we also know that there are different types of diseases like sickle cell, or you can say thalassemias, or hemoglobin C disease, hemoglobin D disease, or even alpha thalassemias, which carries an abnormal pattern on electrophoresis. And these diseases basically are not able to it presents as a hemolytic anemias, and they are not able to carry so much of oxygen inside the blood. So these people will generally come up with a hypoxia along with the hemolytic anemias. Okay, so in the next slide, hemoglobin F is the one which is present in you can say when the baby is newborn, or when in the pregnancy. Hemoglobin F is the majority, is the main thing which is seen. Then as the child grows, the hemoglobin F gets converted into hemoglobin A. Now the variants, as I've discussed, C, D, E, M, S, any of these variants can happen, and this is all because of the mutation of one or more genes which happen in the chain of the hemoglobin. Now you know that hemoglobin is made up of alpha and beta globin chains. Okay, and if there is a point mutation, obviously this will result in the abnormal hemoglobin, which like sickle cell or hemoglobin D disease. Sickle cell is a very classical disease in which what happens is the RBCs normally are biconcave shaped, and they assume a form of a sickle cell in which they are not able to carry oxygen, and also they will become sickle shapes, and they will obstruct the blood vessels, and when after their obstruction there will be hypoxia even further. So you can see there are three main categories of inherited hemoglobin abnormalities. One is a structural variant in which there is a 1-point mutation like hemoglobin S, D and C. These are known as hemoglobinopathies. Then we have a qualitative disorders in which the production of the globin genes is reduced. As I said, alpha and beta globin genes are there. If there is a less production of alpha, we call it alpha thalassemia. If there is a less production of beta, it can be a beta thalassemia. Now there are 4 chains. There are 4 chains of beta and 2 chains of alpha. So when there is a production of 1 or 2, so the amount of anemia, the hemolytic anemias will be less severe. But if there is a deletion of all the 4 chains, it will be a complete complete thalassemia. So the third one is the hereditary persistence of fetal hemoglobin, in which there is a partial failure of the gamma globulin to switch to beta globulin. So gamma globulin, it is seen in the fetal HbF. Then pathological variants, we have hemoglobin H, which is again beta or alpha types. So in this above chart, you can see how much is the relative presence of these hemoglobin, different types of hemoglobins inside the adult and in the infant and child. In the adults, we have HbA as 95 to 98%, A2 as 2 to 3%, HbF is 0.8 to 2%, HbS 0 and C is 0. But in infants, you can see HbF is around 50 to 80%, and by 6 months it reduces to 8%, and above 6 months it is around 1 to 2%. Alright, so a little bit about the hemoglobin S variant. In this, the glutamic acid is substituted by valine by a point mutation. So under low oxygen conditions, the absence of the polar amino acid in the beta chain promotes the polymerization, and RBCs form the sickle cells. The sickle cells block the flow of blood in the normal capillaries. Hemoglobin C, another variation in which the glutamic acid is replaced by lysine. Now remember, in the S it is replaced by valine, and in this it is replaced by lysine. So this causes mostly a chronic hemolytic anemia, not acute phase is less common. In the hemoglobin D, the glutamic acid is replaced by glutamine. Okay. In the E, again it is a beta chain gene, variation in beta chain, and it causes a chronic hemolytic anemia. So you can have a combination of different hemoglobin variants like A and S, hemoglobin A and S, then S and C, sickle cell and C cell diseases. So how do you approach this hemolytic anemia? So first one is you have to look at the RBC morphology. So in the HbS you will be able to see sickle cells, and in the RBCs you will be able to see target cells and even the crystals after splenectomy. Then in thalassemia you will see some microcytosis, target cells and even the basophilic stripling. So what is very common in all this is you will be able to see polychromatophilic cells and also you can say nucleated RBCs to confirm it as a hemolytic anemia. And the hemoglobin would have dropped to around 6 to 7 in acute hemolytic anemias, and sometimes you will be able to see cystocytes and spherocytes, based on the severity of the hemolytic anemia. Okay, so invariably WBCs and platelets will not be affected, but you can see the RDW also won't be affected, but you will be surprised to know that MCV, MCH, MCHC will be all normal, even though the hemoglobin is around 6 to 7, because there's a hemolysis. The shape of the RBCs does not changes. Now the hemoglobin electrophoresis, we have in this there's 2 different types. One is cellulose acetate, and then we have the citrate agar electrophoresis. So one works at an alkaline pH, another works at the acidic pH. Then we have isoelectric focusing, and then HPLC, which is the definite and the final and the most accurate way of diagnosing the different hemoglobin variants. Now the principle. Let's talk about the electrophoresis. What is the principle? It basically gives an alkaline pH. Okay, so when it gives an alkaline pH, the hemoglobin, which is negatively charged, will migrate towards the anode. Okay, so there are different types of hemoglobins. We have HbA, F, C, D and S and F. So all these will migrate at different speeds depending upon the charge on them. Okay, so this is the main principle and the mechanism of it. So we use a cellulose acetate strip, which is at a pH of 8.2 to 8.6 on the cathode side, okay, negative side, and the other side is the anode side. So you feed the sample at the cathode side, and since they are negatively charged, they will move towards the anode. Okay, so this I have spoken about it. Now we have to give a color to the lysate or to the samples, so that when you will be able to see those migration, not the migration, but the bands which are formed after the electrophoresis. So now this is a very clear picture. The negatively charged are moving towards the anode, okay, which is a positively charged, right? So what are the factors which influence the mobility? First of all, the net charge of the molecule, size and shape, and concentration of the molecule in the solution. And what do we have in the media? What media we provide for them to transport? We have a paper, starch, cellulose acetate, polyacrylamide, agarose. So molecules, they pass through this porous matrix at different velocities. So what are the requirements? A hemolysate of the EDTA sample. Okay, we need a tris boric acid buffer, Whitman paper, membranes, and a control HbA2. Controls, are very, very important when we perform any test, because the chances of false positive and false negative are very, very common. So then we have a destaining solution to stain them. So procedure is you place everything inside the chamber, and then you put the samples on the cathodic side, negatively sized, and then you put the strips on which they have to migrate, and then after putting the thing, you put a filter paper, and then switch on the current, and all the the samples, they will start moving towards the anode. So this is the voltage at which it is being done. Okay, so then we have to drain up the excess water and take up those bands, and then we have to study those bands. So now you can see this is another one, which is anode chamber and the cathode chamber, and this is a migration of the bands you can see on the filter paper. So now you have to understand how the bands migrate and how does the chart looks like. So you can see on the left side there's the origin of the bands. Okay, so when there is a origin of the bands, the HPA is the one which is the fastest moving. It goes and migrates towards the extreme side. Okay, then HPA2 will be left behind. Then HPF will be just after the A. Then SDG, if they are available, they will be behind F. So this is how they migrate based on the charge. Now let's interpret these let's interpret this chart. So now you see the first one it is migrating, and the majority 95% is HPA, and a very small amount is HPA2. So this is a normal thing. Okay, normal patient will behave like this, because how much we have HPA as 95% and HPA2 as around 2 to 3%. The next one is HPA2 is majority, but you are able to see a band in sickle cell. Okay, so if HBA and sickle is present, then obviously you are dealing with a sickle cell trait. Okay, now the next one, if you want to see the sickle cell disease, what will happen? You will have a band in HBF and sickle cell trait, and in the sickle cell HPA will be missing. So that is the time you call as a sickle cell disease. And the next one is hemoglobin D. You will have a band in A and D. So you will see that S, D and G, they migrate and stop at the same point. So you can understand in this particularly, you cannot differentiate whether this band is S, D or G. So it might be difficult for us to understand whether this is a sickle cell or a hemoglobin D trait. So what do we do in such situations? We send the sample for HPLC, because HPLC is a procedure which can separate clearly all these bands. And what is the other thing which is important to understand, that HPLC cannot differentiate between the alpha thalassemias. It can be used only for beta thalassemia bands. Okay, so the next one is SC disease. SC is, you will get a band in S and in the C. So you have to differentiate on HPLC because there can be a A2 band also can be present. So you might misdiagnose it as sickle trait. So you have to call it as SC disease. Probably you go for HPLC. Then SE disease. The normal cord blood, you can see there is a HPF majority, and then a small part of HPA is also present. Now if it is HBC, you will see a major band in C, and you will also see a major band in A. Okay, and the below one is the control. Now let's see this. The upper picture is not very clear on the right. You can see above is A and S, sickle and A. Sickle is majority, and then A and S, then A and C. Okay, so this is basically ulta of this. Alright, so let's skip to these, but you just focus on this particular slide and you can understand where are the different types of bands which can be seen. Now sickle cell trait, this is a heterozygous state, and which it will be a presence of both A and S, and you will be able to see both the bands. Sickle cell anemia, HBS and HBF. Sickle cell disease, thalassemia major. What will happen in thalassemia major? You will see HBF band, you will see HBA and HBA2. So HBF will even go to 60 to 70%. Okay, and if it is minor, HBA2 will be higher, and HBA will be like again majority, but A2 will be above 4%, but HBF will be lesser. And then you can have a combination of sickle and thalassemia and C diseases also. Alright, so this is how you perform the test and you interpret the test, and then if required you send the sample for HPLC. Now the citrate agar electrophoresis is nothing but it gives you a pH of 6 to 6.2, and then the procedure is almost similar, and you can see the machine, the apparatus which is being used for the separation of the different bands. And now this is the comparison. There's a little difference in both the comparison, because in A you will be able to see A, 2, D and F and G. So this is something which has a different way of interpretation, but you can run the sample on cellulose acetate electrophoresis and alkaline pH and send the patient and send the sample for HPLC. Okay, so this electrophoresis is most commonly used for all type of hemoglobin disorders, especially the hemolytic anemias. It cannot be used in iron deficiency and all those things, only for hemolytic anemias. You should go back and look at the classification of hemolytic anemias. So specifically in thalassemia in India, thalassemia is around, in Karnataka specifically, it is around 4 to 6%. You can see the the percentage or the incidence. But in northern India, especially in Punjab and Jammu Kashmir, Rajasthan, that belt, the thalassemia is quite common to around 10 to 12%. And the sickles and the C disease, the sickle ones are most common in the coastal area, specifically around in India it is mostly around the Bangalore district area, but around the world it is more common in the Mediterranean regions. HPC is more common in the Odisha and West Bengal. So you can see there are certain belts in which this hemoglobinopathies are more common. So it is very important to diagnose them. It's very important to diagnose them and label the patient that, because the patient should know their condition. If it is minor condition, they should not marry another minor, thalassemia minor, and otherwise the major baby will be formed, and the thalassemia major baby is transfusion dependent throughout their lives. Okay, so you have to make sure that these people, they know their status, and if it is HPC, and also if they know that their status, they can be careful about the infections and they can take better care of them. So what are the possible reasons which can affect the test? Having a blood transfusion in the past 3 months, or because a transfusion, if there is some foreign blood inside the body, obviously the bands you will not get. Okay, and if it is iron deficiency, false low positives can be seen. What are the applications? Evaluation of unexplained hemolytic anemias, obviously, and then abnormal sickles, and positive family history, neonatal screening if the parents or the family history is there, and positive results for sickles on the solubility test. ठीक है. So this was an important thing to know and understand because it is being followed, and we have to know about the hemolytic anemias, the classification, how to diagnose them. Go back and see what are the other different tests which are being used, like the solubility test, the sickling test, what is G6PD deficiency test, and what is Coombs test, which are the other tests which are being used for hemolytic anemias. Okay, so I think I'm done with my class, and if you have any problem, please let me know. Thank you.